agreement which would see attending crews reduced by 1 or even 2 members. The department is insisting that changing the crew numbers would simply keep Ireland in line with international norms. I've been speaking today to station officer with Edgeworthstown Fire Station in Longford, Michael Spillane, who says there are a number of reasons for concern in this new Keeping Community Safe document, particularly in relation to numbers of firemen attending emergencies.
Well, the Keeping Community Safe document poses a few dangers, and in particular what you've mentioned there, the lowering of the staffing levels of the incidents. Firstly, I'd like to point out to you that all our training is done with a crew of 6. To turn out then with 4 people would be, we find, detrimental not only to the public but to the safety of the firemen. Firemen are working men, and they're entitled to get home safe after they're dealing with whatever incidents comes before them. I'm a family man. I'm entitled to go home to my wife safe, so I think that this document puts my life in danger and the life of every fireman in this country.
As you mentioned there, ye train with the number of 6, and every crew member, it has to be said, is trained very specifically to do a very specific job once they get to the scene, and that's where reducing by 1 will have a huge implication. Tell me about when you go out to a fire, Michael, and what way the team is set up.
Well, every firefighter is trained to do every job. By determination, where you sit in the fire appliance often indicates the job you're doing. So if you're sitting on and your numbers are 2 and 4, then you're kind of a firefighting team. Whereas the driver mechanic has his own jobs. He's fully responsible to get the guys out to the fire, then keep a water supply going for them. So then we're left with 2 other guys in the back. The incident commander is the station officer or the sub-officer. He's in charge of the incident. He makes the decisions. Continuing dynamic risk assessment has to be done. That is the law for the safety of the firemen.
Okay, so that's a very specific job again for one person does that.
Yes, that's the officer in charge. The officer in charge is instructed not to get involved in the minute detail of dealing with an incident. So now we have a driver who's the driver mechanic operating the pump and relaying messages to Dublin. We have the 2 firefighting team. If we have to commit a team to a burning building, the law states that we must have a spare team outside ready to go in the case that anything might happen inside. A ceiling could collapse, a floor could give way. So the guys that are going in need the protection of the guys outside. How we could do this with a second appliance turning out with 4 people, that's 1 incident commander and 3 guys. I would not like to see 3 firefighters attending a fire in my house, especially if I had somebody trapped in the building.
Presumably, you know, this Keeping Community Safer, there's also very certainly a cost-cutting reduction here that the department would save money, presumably, by sending less people out. Is that what this is about, do you think?
As part of the KCS document, there's a supporting documentation comes out with it, and we got a note that's called a Good Practice Note 2.6, and that indicates very clearly how we have to reduce the numbers of firemen going out. To me, that is a licence to cut back any way they like in the fire service.
Now they say that this would only bring Ireland in line with the international norms. Other countries can do with less firemen apparently attending fires.
No matter where you have a fire, if you burn a bag of coal anywhere, it burns equally as hot in England as it does in Ireland. What they're trying to say is that it is the norms. Well, let me explain to you very briefly, Anne.
Yeah.
Across Europe, firefighting is done in the same method, but the stations are much closer together. So if you were going out with a crew of 5 or 6 there, and you requested backup, that backup could roll out along with you, not a mind coming behind you. In rural Ireland, if I go out and I call for backup when I get there, that backup could be 45 minutes away. 45 minutes is a long time for somebody being in a burning building.
That's the maximum time possibly though, isn't it?
No, I wouldn't say it's the maximum. Certainly, just by way of explanation, and very briefly to you, if there's a fire in Edgeworthstown, and the fact that your knowledge of Longford is reasonably good, if there's a fire in Edgeworthstown, and we call in Granard, and then there's a fire somewhere else and Ballymahon are called in, the statutory risks are still there. The risk of the Abbotstown on fire and all those other risks are still there. So if you pull 2 fire stations in one direction and there's an incident in the opposite direction, then you're looking at, even in a small county, you're looking at a travel distance. The firefighters have to turn in first, then they have to travel to the new incident. You could be looking at possibly even more than 45 minutes.
So they're talking about reducing the numbers. How much can ye fight this, Michael? But I know you're having there will be a ballot now about this next week, is it?
Yes, the ballot is imminent. That's going ahead anyhow. But what I would say about how much we can fight it, it's premature to speak about that at the moment. We will deal with that, and we'll deal with it very effectively when that time comes.
Okay, but I mean, obviously, like every emergency service, you don't want to have to go on strike to prove a point or to get what you feel is safe working conditions.
Again, this is where the retained fire service is unique. Each retained fire service station deal with their community and with their relations and their friends, and nobody wants to see anybody in danger. And how difficult it is for us to deal with this, the department know very well how difficult it is. But believe you me, we cannot put our men at risk anymore, and we cannot put the community at risk.
You were telling me when we were having a chat earlier, there's actually less firemen in this country today, and we're talking about 2,000 or so retained fire service people in this country, but there's less today than there was in 1967?
Yes, and I'd just like if you could do a comparison on the population today and the number of extra buildings we have and the extra risks that are out there today compared to 1967.
Yeah, that's bananas. In Longford, roughly, we have about 55 firefighters.
Yeah, that's correct, yes.
Okay.
And that 55, and if I can explain to you, the rural stations, i.e. Edgerstown, Ballymahon and Granard and Lanesborough, those stations have 9 men. And the idea of the 9 men is to secure 6 as a crew. All your training is done on 6, remember? So we need to have 6 available. Now, what is, if you have 9 people, each of them have to take 4 weeks holidays. So if you take your 9 people and take your 4 weeks consecutively out of that, then you're very little weeks left where you have a full complement. Yeah. That's without anybody getting sick, any emergencies. Look, there are
emergencies happen to firefighters as well as to ordinary people.
Exactly, I would agree with you totally. We are human beings as well, and an emergency can happen in my house the very same as yours.
Okay, so the next thing you can do, though, is to ballot your... I would imagine you're expecting a fairly strong mandate from members from any ballot that you do.
Well, the feeling of all the firefighters that have contacted me, both privately and to the other types of the media, is that everyone wants this document objected to in the strongest possible way, and we will carry out the wishes of the firemen.
Okay, we don't know how soon they were considering implementing the reduction of fire members. Do we have a date for the implementation of that, or how soon they wanted to do that?
Well, then that goes back again to the fact that there are over 30 fire authorities, and each are picking little bits of the document that they want to implement. It's been implemented in some counties as we speak. Just luckily enough in Longford and some of the Midland areas, it's not implemented just yet.
There you go, picking little bits of the document each council. Maybe that needs some regularisation as well. But that's Michael Spillane, their station officer with Edgeworthstown Fire Station in Longford, just giving a pretty good, I hope you'll agree, practical sort of scenario for why they are concerned, not only for their own safety as firefighters, but also for the safety of people who may be, God forbid, trapped in a burning building or whatever other kind of scenario, if they have to reduce the crew members who are attending the scenes. Michael says they're already down to a minimum, and to be safe, they really shouldn't be asked to cut that any further. Do you have an opinion? Did you know about it? Did you know that these kind of plans were in the offing for our fire services? Give us a call, 0818 22 7777. Text us on 087 1200 900.